Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, welcome to my guide for Ares. Ares is an odd case for a Guardian, focusing on heavy damage and defense but lacking in overall CC, these aspects leading to him at times being considered a good soul laner and even a jungler. He is certainly still great as a support though, and since that's where he's seen most consistently, that's the role this god will be focused on. Ares' passive is a simple yet effective one. Ares gains 30 magical power for every completed aura item he has. This of course works for Ares a great deal, since so many aura items are created with the support class in mind, so Ares basically gets rewarded for buying what he'd usually already be buying. This does mean that he may deviate from the normal support build just a little bit to splash in something like a Mystical Mail, Pythags, or Voidstone, where other supports may shy away from those items. If you're ever stumped looking for more aura items, don't forget that there's a whole tab for them in the item shop, just don't ask me how to do that on console. Still though, Ares rarely deviates from the core support build, since again, it already incorporates plenty of aura items to give him a nice backbone of power, but he's still able to flex into more damage or forego some aura items to fit more niche counter items, or CDR items too. Relics wise, you always want Blink on Ares. It's mostly in conjunction with his ultimate, but you're really going to struggle making an impact on Ares in the late game without Blink. Second relic can really be whatever supportive relic you want. If you're new to support, try and accustom yourself with each of these relics' functionality, because the best option for a second relic is going to change every single match. But if I had one relic to fall back on, it'd probably be Sprinter's Shell. You may wonder why Sprint is up there with such a solid all-rounder relic like Shell, but it's in part thanks to his most vital core ability, his first ability. Ares fires a chain, this chain being able to be fired through walls and minions. If it hits any enemy other than an enemy god, it damages them once, then disappears. When it hits an enemy god though is where things get fun. The chain becomes attached to the enemy god, slowing, crippling, meaning that the god cannot use dashes, leaps, or teleports, and damaging them for every second the chain is connected, while granting Ares movement speed. The chain will disappear completely if the target moves too far away. That's not all though. If the chain is connected to an enemy god, Ares can refire this ability within 2 seconds of the first chain connecting, creating another chain which replaces the current chain, as in stops it entirely, if it hits the same enemy god. If it hits another god, it will create another chain. Ares can chain up to 3 times total, and is of course free to chain other targets in addition to the initial god. Also of note, Ares is able to chain again even if he got CC'd in between chains, so if he still has that time to chain, he can still chain. So the most efficient way to use this ability is to land a chain and spread out the usage of it. I see some Ares players just machine gun chains into people, and that's not the best way to use it, even if it is probably the easiest. Typically, the best way to use the chains is to chain, wait for a damage tick, then chain again, then repeat. An easy way to learn the timing for this is just a basic attack after every chain. Not only is this a great basic attack cancel if you're in their face, but it gets a good rhythm down for the chains too. So if you're new to Ares or Smite in general, this ability is Ares. If you really have trouble hitting these chains, Ares probably isn't the god for you. That isn't to say don't even bother, but Ares' effectiveness in the very early game solely comes from this ability. As spoiler alert, this is Ares' only form of CC in his core kit. A slowing cripple isn't bad at all, but most Guardians have abilities twice the CC and quadruple the area of effectiveness, not to mention ease of use. But these chains hurt, and any hunter with a decent early game can easily follow up off the slow, and together Ares and an aggressive ADC can decimate any target in the early game. So the question then becomes, when do you go for the chains? All the time. Literally. If it's up, try to get in range for them with a bit of leeway and see if you can get a chain train started. But of course, against certain lanes you can't really do this, and I'll get into the nitty gritty of matchups and when you should pick Ares a bit later. But for now, just keep in mind that Ares revolves around trying to get his chain up as many people as he can in the early game, and using the ability's utility in conjunction with a teammate's damage to shred through any target and try to get ahead. So finally, speaking on the movement speed of this ability, you do actually want to try and turn and chain on those who are chasing. Ares really has few escape options, and the slow with the movement speed buff is his best bet, solely because that's his only bet in that respect. Part of what lets Ares and his team be aggressive though is his second ability. Ares grants himself and all allies in a massive AoE, protections, crowd control reduction, and HP 5 for a whopping 8 seconds, and Ares is able to increase the protections gained by having multiple chains active. An all-around crazy strong ability, and you want to use it every single time you want to be aggressive or are beating a retreat. It's really that simple. That said, I wouldn't really just throw it out there. This ability really does make a difference for you and your team, so I just wait until you know for sure that you're going to either be engaging in a fight or retreating from a fight before using it. So naturally, again, this revolves around Ares' first ability and, well, hitting it, then following up with this. Ares' third ability is no different. Ares emits flames in a small cone AoE in front of him for 4 seconds. These flames doing a base damage in addition to percent health damage, dealing extra damage to minions, and Ares is knock-up immune for the entire duration. This is a very straightforward ability. You use it after your first ability, and hey, even if you miss the chain, if you're close enough to hit the flames, you might as well just give him a short torch, since his first and third abilities have cooldowns that work directly with each other. So needless to say, this is the ability that Ares uses against minions and jungle monsters, both in the support role and his off rolls, and never his chains. That shit does like 1 damage. I mean, if you gotta use the chains to finish off a camp or a wave, just use it. But know that in roles other than support, Ares switches over to prioritizing the flames. As while they don't do as much damage as the chains, getting roasted by Ares at any point in the game hurts like hell, thanks to that max health damage. And of course, whether you prioritize the chains or the flames, the two together are an absolute nightmare for any target during the early and mid game. A nightmare for the entire game, however, is Ares' ultimate. Ares becomes CC immune and shackles any enemy gods within the circle AoE. These shackles not contributing in any way to the effect of Ares' first ability. After 2.5 seconds, all shackled gods are damaged and pulled directly in front of Ares' current location, and then are stunned for 1 second. Easily one of the most iconic abilities in all of SMITE, but naturally comes with its fair share of caveats. First things first, like Ares' first ability, it's his defining ability in teamfights. His CC is nowhere near the level of other guardians outside of this ability, so everyone on the enemy team knows you're trying to go for it, hence the use of Blink. Even so though, given the absurdly good CC on this ability, most squishies are going to play back and save their CC immunities, whether it be beads or a CC immune ultimate. But that doesn't mean you're to play back and sit on your hands while you wait for your teammates to burn the enemy's beads and ultimates. Despite the fact that when this ultimate does land, it's incredibly devastating, its main use is to burn those beads and CC immune abilities, simply because if it lands, the person it landed on is guaranteed dead. It's a bit of a bummer, but you really do have to use this ability to burn those beads and CC immune ultimates for your team, rather than have a big climactic 5-man pull that instantly wins the team fight. You still want to take point with Ares and blink in with your ult to burn those sweet beads on the enemy squishies for yourself and your team, then follow up from there. Or if they immediately retreat, target whoever used their beads in that last fight in the next one. So as the Ares player, it really is up to you to keep track of everyone's beads and try to ask your teammates whose beads are down and focus the hell out of them. But of course, needless to say, while tanks are easy targets for you, you do not want to be ulting just the tanks into your team. You're basically just giving them a free engage onto you. I mean, if you have to pull, for instance, the support as well as their ADC, no harm, no foul. But never pull just the tanks. Of course, there's exceptions when you're like chasing them down after you've already won a fight, but it's never how you want to start a fight. For ability leveling, you want your 3 at level 1 and your 1 at level 2. You then skip leveling your 2 in favor of your 1 at level 3, then level your 2 at level 4. Then, you put 1 level into your ultimate and from there, max your 1, then your 3, skipping the ultimate for now. And you max your 3 instead of your 1 if you're in any role other than support. Then once the 1 and 3 are maxed, you start leveling your 2 and the ultimate. It's been a while since I've done a matchup chart, but for Ares I think it's important. So here's a list of ADCs who are both good and bad with Ares. So if you see a god on the top of the tier list on your team, Ares is probably going to be a good pick with them, and vice versa. And then here, this one's mostly just for ranked, since if you see one of these gods on the enemy team, you almost definitely won't be able to play Ares well into their team, as Ares tends to get countered harder by support picks than any other support in the game. If there's any god to play if you want to understand the importance of team play, it's Ares. Plenty of supports can splash a bit of damage, get greedy with their farm, and really pick up the slack for any given team. But while Ares' damage is fearsome, his lack of strong, instant lockdown as well as damage in the form of burst makes his carry potential a lot lower than other guardians. That said though, play with a friend or a random player who knows Ares' potential, and Ares could easily set you up for success in the early game and carry that into a strong mid to late game. And while Ares lacks the instantaneous CC and burst of some guardians, he does technically control targets for longer thanks to his chains, and certainly does more damage than any guardian overall, even if it's over a long duration. So while Ares can really struggle in certain matchups and certainly from behind, he's still an absolutely fearsome support and can completely eviscerate anyone who disrespects his damage early on. Ares is definitely a god where you're going to run into a lot of little things as you play him. So hopefully I've given you a good understanding of the important stuff on the god, as the rest you really have to learn the hard way and get your hands dirty. That's all I have on Ares for now. Thanks for watching.